Welcome everyone back to episode 4 of Land of Confusion in this series. I'm not sure how long this will go. We're just kind of playing it by ear. But for now, I'm really excited for today's episode. I wanted to go ahead and read off a disclaimer really quickly, just to make it clear in case anyone is watching who this might pertain to. So this is a personal blog and podcast. Any views and opinions expressed on this blog and podcast are personal and belong solely to the owner and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity, unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions expressed by myself or any guest are not intended to malign any religious, ethnic, club, organization, company, or individual. All content provided on this blog is for informational purposes only. The owner of this blog makes no representations as to the accuracy or completeness of any information on this site I found by following any link on this site or any link on this site. The owner will not be liable for any errors or omissions in this information, nor for the availability of this information. The owner will not be liable for any losses, injuries, or damage from the display or use of this information. I just wanted to put that out there in case there are any lawyers watching. You guys, I'm really excited to introduce this next guest. And first, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has reached out privately. I really appreciate hearing your stories, and I'm noticing that everyone is at a different stage in this process. Some people are here just to kind of creep on things. Some people are here because they have similar questions and they're just observing. And some people are coming to different conclusions. I want everyone to know that you're welcome here and that I have no desire to steer anyone in any direction towards any conclusions. My conclusions are my own, but I do appreciate the open-mindedness of being willing to listen. And I also appreciate, like I said before, everyone who has reached out. I've learned so much, and I just hope that overall this is a place where people can just feel free to connect to things, let go of the things they don't resonate with, think for yourself, and ultimately come to your own conclusions. So without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce my guest, and I'm actually going to give her the opportunity to introduce herself in the way that she would like to, as maybe many of you will know her or of her from this Telegram community. So go ahead, girl.
That my cue, huh? Hiya. So I am Wonderland, as people would know me. I'm not going to dox myself on anything other. Most people know me as Wonderland. On TG, Wonderland Travel, or just Wonderland, or Wonder. People just call me a wonder. I don't know why, but
you're Wonder in my phone, and you can't see the camera right now, but I brought out my special mug for you today. It is a Wonder Woman mug, so this is in your honor.
Aw.
But
yeah, I can't see. Just phone.
So I'm excited to hear your journey, because you and I, let's just say real quick, that we met through the California community and we became friends fairly quickly. We've had an up and down type of relationship, which we'll get into, but ultimately we recently reconnected because I felt it was on my heart to reach out to you. I thought of you so many times throughout the past few months, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's just been so beautiful to rekindle this friendship. But I'm really excited for you to share your story from the beginning. So at what point what brought you to Tori, and just where did this all begin for you?
So for me, it was, well, like many from what I've seen on other people's stories, it's the same for me as well. You know, I came from one of those, as Tor would call a red stringer, you know, because we've all, I think, came from one of those places and found her through one of those places. For me, it was, quite frankly, listening to one of his, driving down where I'm at work, you know, and I listened to him daily. And I heard her interview with him, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this woman. It's like, it was kind of like end of story for me then. I had never even heard of the platform Telegram, but that's where I went to find her, because I guess that's what was advertised at that time. I'm pretty sure it would have had to been, because like I said, I'd never heard of Telegram prior to that. Wasn't part of it, was never on it, didn't even know it existed. And I joined I'm like, I got to hear more from her. It's like, I loved her voice. It was like this instant, like, wow, it was just a resonation, right? Like it just resonated with me really fast and instant. I followed her from there. And that's all it took. From that point, I actually stopped listening to everybody else I had been listening to because she was all I needed, or so I had thought at the time. It was a really fast connection. The way she comes off and the way she would present information just held my attention and made me want to stay and continue following her and learning from her. So that's what it was as far as my beginning.
So
what year?
What year
and
was that?
I think it was 19 or 20.
Oh wow, early.
Yeah.
Early on. So
there was like, I went into TG when there was like, it was like in the 200s. There was like 200 and something people.
Wow. That's so crazy.
Wasn't many of us.
So you told me before, but like, what was it like back then? Because a lot of the listeners haven't been around since the beginning of all of that.
It was good. It was totally different than it is now. Like back then, anybody, I mean, like I said, there was like 200 and something people, right? And as a new person would come in, everybody was like vetted right away. Any spam was instantly removed. Anything that was put on the channel, it was verified. Like, is this accurate and truthful information that we can use and we can rely on or we can trust? Right? Any sort of spam was removed. People that would come in just to start crap were removed, or at least asked not to. I mean, it wasn't like insta ban, but people could talk. Like everybody worked together as well because the information on main chat was accurate and known to be accurate. We would all work together in order to verify things or to suss things out or to make sure that everything was accurate, and we could use the information on main chat and know that it was good, right? Say Tor would come out and say, hey, let's find this or that. It's like anything that was put, we know will be accurate because it was vetted. And it was easy to do because there weren't many people. I mean, I understand now how it blew up, after it blew up, and why that can't really be a possibility, I suppose, unless you put more people in there and whatnot. I mean, I guess it's possible. Anything's possible. But back then, I mean, we could talk with her as well. Like we would have conversations. We'd have dance-offs or, meme waters and different stuff. It was just fun. She'd pop on there at night. We'd just shoot the shit, and talk. We could you actually got to know the people. I guess main chat was kind of like how the state groups are then, only it was main chat. But then, and I don't know if it was done on purpose or if it just happened to happen at that timing, but somebody had dropped the link to Telegram because it was protected for a long time so that things could stay accurate and true within there, right? And it was a really good environment and people got along. I mean, once somebody dropped, it was on Twitch. Somebody had dropped the Telegram link on Twitch, and it blew up like overnight. I think it was like 1,000 people at first. Next day, there's like 2,000 people, and it just went from there, and it spiraled, and then pretty much anything went in main chat after that, and it just kind of started spiraling. So then at that point, once it was out, and it was just kind of shared everywhere at that point. Things changed drastically.
So you got to see it go from
a very definitely nice
grassroots thing into this explosion. That's kind of cool. So at what point did like the stateroom situation start to happen?
So the staterooms, okay, I know from what I know about how they even came about, right, is I know that one of Tor's admins had this idea a while prior to them happening. I know there was a discussion had. Now there's this discrepancy, and it just comes down to like who's right, who's wrong. That much I can't verify. I can't say for sure. All I can say is what I know or what I've experienced and heard, right? That at that point, then another one of her admins, Tor, and her had a conversation to go ahead and start maybe or asked people if they wanted to start, state groups, and they left it to the people to do it. But I think she put it out on one of her podcasts to do that and to start that. But it wasn't her idea. It had been her admins. And that was in 2020, I believe.
So did they, I forgot if you said this, did they essentially tell people to start their own?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it was kind of up to each person in each state. Like if somebody wanted to take the initiative to start the state group for that state, then they did. Like, I know for California, it was Raven at the time. She started it. It was requested that people do it, and then people chose whether they did or they didn't. So nobody was assigned, nobody was voted, nobody was, anything like that. And in the beginning, it was just kind of a start out idea at that time. I don't even know whether Tor and her admins knew that it was going to blow up or not, or work. I think it had been an idea, a suggestion, and a world of possibilities, like everything we try, right? And then it just happened to take off, and then it just kind of became what it is today, and attached so much because I think it blew up and became what it did, and now it's a huge part of TS, right?
Yeah.
I mean, majority of it now. So
exactly. So it started very grassroots, and it's interesting because in the last year and a half or so, I've seen it go through multiple transitions, but I love hearing like where it started from. So as far as like, at what point did you get involved with the admin stuff, or when did the staterooms, in your recollection, get taken over by Tori's admins?
I was just like everybody else. I mean, the whole reason I even started listening to all this stuff and following her too is like, I'm a regular person, just like most people, I think. I mean, I think most people are regular. I don't know. Anyway, back. So, just a regular person that, I mean, most people don't know that wanted to make a difference for our country and for my area, to be able to help. I knew that shit was off. Things were off, and I wanted to make a difference. So most people just don't know how to go about it. And she was awesome in guidance on, well, we can do this and we can do that. Speaking of Tor, right? And with the state, so I was just a regular person. Now, Raven, like I had mentioned earlier, was the one that started the Cali state group, stepped up and created it. And I didn't even know her. I'd never spoke to her before. I didn't even know she knew me. And she reached out to me one day and asked me if I wanted to be an admin in the Cali state group. I told her I'd never done that before. I'm willing to learn, but it's like, but sure. I like I said, I don't have any experience or anything. And it just kind of went from there. And at the time, there were no rules really per se that I can remember, that I can recall. Like, I think everybody pushed Tor always because it just seemed to always be connected that way, just kind of automatically, right? I don't know if it was a thing or not, but from what I remember, there was no rules. And I'm not really sure. I think it was from Tor's directives on, hey, you guys have, and she put it out there either by a post on her Red Phone channel, or in her podcast. She would say things like, hey, you guys are infiltrated, or hey, these people are bad, or these groups are bad, or these are red stringers and you're infiltrated in these groups. You need to get out of your state group. And so that's when things started to get implemented, I think, as far as rules went. And most of them came as from like a Tor directive and went from there. From what I understand, from what I did as an admin, anyway, most of the things were like, okay, Tor said this, Tor said that. These people are not to be in the group, so we gotta remove them. Or these people are bad and gonna screw us over somehow, we remove them. And it came from there. It wasn't that at least for Cali going forward, right? It was never people the admins making up their own rules. It was always something that had came from Tor, one way or another. And that's what it was for me in that.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful because a lot of people right now are currently trying to find answers of like, where do these rules come from or where do these structures come from? And as someone who came in, and people know my story, who came in later when there was a lot of implementation of these rules, and I learned later a lot of it did come from the top-ish. I think it's helpful for people to understand that someone like you was brought into that kind of culture you were given this clear direction. And I understand why, because there was this clear concern about infiltration because any good movement's going to get hijacked, right? So I just think it's good for people to hear where you were getting your direction from at the time, because on first sight, I was like, why are there all these rules in this room? And I think a lot of people have had that feeling, you know?
Well, plus we were told, I mean, now, mind you, just to be clear, it's like she wouldn't come in and say, you need to make this rule, this rule, this rule. What she would do is say, these are who you should not have in your groups. And the admins would say, okay, this is who we should not have in our groups if they belong to this group. Or she would say something, anybody that's part of this group or these groups should not be in your state groups. I mean, that she put that out, most of the stuff she had put out publicly. So it's not like it was a direct from her to us individually. It was put out across the board. So the admins of the states would take that and go from there with it, just so that we're clear that it wasn't like her on the phone with us saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
She put it out there saying, you guys have this in your states, get them out. And then the admins would go from there with it. And also the rules themselves, it's like, okay, as you go along, it's like, well, if they're part of this group, okay, how do we go about making a rule on that? So anybody that she would list, then it would get added on the rules. And it would just kind of get added over the years, right? We never removed the rules. We just seemed to keep adding to them. And then the list got to where, I mean, you needed a whole separate freaking room just to have a list for the damn rules, you know? It's like, okay. And at the time, I mean, you know, I really thought that I was doing the right thing. Like I believed in what I was doing. There was a time, like I would have taken a bullet for that woman. I cried about times how I just felt she was just an angel sent from heaven, you know, and I really believed in what I was doing, what I was being shown, what I was being told. And so I would fight tooth and nail, like it, you know, I mean, everybody kind of knew me as kind of just a mouthpiece so that, you know, don't mess with her, you're going to mess with me. Right. Like, and it's like, it was really disappointing later, but let's just say, let's leave with that. It was really disappointing, but she has a way of like, okay, you do this and we would take it from there. And so it can't really go back on her. I mean, she would say it, but we can't say, hey, she told us.
Well, it's no different, in my opinion, from like, she'll say things publicly on her show and we all do it. And a lot of the things are good. You know what I mean? It's like, she puts out a CTA, call these people, do this thing. And we of course follow direction because we love and respect and trust her. So I understand why a little better now, why some of those rules came to be, because I think that there was a lot of flack taken from people like you and others, like it was your idea. And if she said it even on a show, I can understand why you would have implemented it. But my question goes back to, and this maybe you would do or don't have an answer, but when I think about these groups shouldn't be in your room, I think that this might have been, I could be wrong, where some of the investigating people or paranoia stuff that I was a part of, that I engaged in, maybe comes in, because how do you know someone's in a group, right? They show up with their handle and they're not like, hi, I'm from this said group, so therefore you know exactly who I am. Nobody does that. So I think that could be where it maybe turned wrong and started to get into a little bit of a culture of paranoia.
No. Well, yeah, yes and no. So there are people that legit are doing searches on people, that are gathering people's data, that are doing backgrounds on people, that are searching people's private information. I know because it was done to me. And I was in some rooms where they would share the information with other people they found on other people. So if you wanted to look to see if somebody is part of X, Y, and Z, or if they do ABC or whatever, they're definitely looking. There are certain people that help. See, I don't know how to word this. Let's see. There are certain people that have access to certain systems that will allow for private information to be known to them once they do their searches. And they give that information to whoever's looking. That's part of a certain back channel, right? Back group, private group, whatever. And that'll be used. Now, there's also different tricks I don't know how many hours I spent like just going in these different groups to see who's in these other groups that we would have to associate. Like, okay, are they infiltrating our room? Right? It's like, are they infiltrating just to steal our work or whatever? It's like, and then you find them in these rooms. It's like, okay, you've got a snapshot of it or whatever. It's like, here, you can say you're not part of that group, but here you are part of that group, talking, sharing, doing everything, yada yada. And then we would remove them. But wasn't just me. Like, there's many people like me, right?
Yeah.
And you think you're doing the right thing at the time, and it's so messed up because really, it's like, who cares? Like, I mean, you notice now, right, that all these people that we were told were bad or we shouldn't follow or listen to are now being accepted, or that even Tor herself goes and talks to, or goes and visits the sites on. And to be honest, something changed. And I don't know if our community got sold out. I mean, how do you go back after? Because I know there was an admin that went to a I don't know if it's a seminar thing or whatever, but it had to do with the machines. And Tor had sent one of her admins to go to this thing, and that admin was approached by people there about selling our community, selling it out. Like, I don't know if it was just for data or if it was to be able to join and whatever. Either way, it was approached as, is it for sale? I wonder what that price was, to be honest. I always wonder what that price was. But the timing of things changed when a certain Judas was made and then disappeared, and then the community changed all of a sudden, and then all the people that Tori had been telling us for years isn't allowed in our groups is now open. Anybody's open now.
Yeah.
And then she starts interviewing in different places too, and more money starts coming in, capabilities, and people can start. I mean, everything just changed. The timing was there. To me, it makes sense. I can't verify it, but other than the conversations I had with people and what was done and said, but that's my personal experience, and it's hearsay because it's even coming from me, even though it's my experience, it's still hearsay, right? So,
yeah,
the timing fits though. And how do you go back? You've got thousands, 24,000 followers, and for the last 2-3 years, you've been telling them, hey, you don't want to deal with these people. Get these people out of your rooms, out of your groups, whatever. And then all of a sudden, I mean, let's just say hypothetically, the price was right. I mean, she's never said she never had a price. She just always said that everybody has one, right? So you go back, and then it's like, timing wise, how do you go back and without losing your followers and say, hey, yeah, never mind everything I've told you the last 2 or 3 years. Hey, I got some money in my pocket. It's like, go ahead and let these people in now. You can't do that if that were hypothetically what happened, right? So how would you go about doing that and make that change? I guess you would need a scapegoat. Did that one get paid? I don't know, but it would make sense to me. But that's my personal opinion. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or somebody just got used and abused, even more so on top of the already being used and abused. And it was really a messed up thing to be used that way. Somebody to blame it on in order to make these changes or implement these changes so that you don't lose your followers. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. These are my personal opinions. So everybody knows that it's just things that I've tried to figure out, okay, based on my experience, conversations I've had, and things I've seen.
Well,
so,
and it's also safe to say that you have more understanding of things for multiple reasons. One, you've been here for longer than most people since the beginning. And also, you have had inside access to things. And even on a very small level, I understand one thing that so when I was sharing with our room, like a lot of the truth and stuff that I was seeing behind the scenes, a lot of people look at you like, why are you just spreading drama? Why are you trying to be this way? And what they don't understand until you become an admin, unless you're just connected to people who happen to tell you what's going on, you don't really know how much is actually going on in the background. Like and I wasn't even close to knowing what you know or what you experience, but in that short window of time of me being an admin over the last year on and off, like I started to see behind the curtain. Next thing you know, I'm seeing almost an interwoven spider web of connectivity. And I kept seeing more and more of how it all worked together like a very well-oiled organism. And I'm even learning more. And since I've been doing these podcasts, because people are coming to me, and someone recently was like, yeah, this is my story. And they love Tori. They don't agree with my conclusion, but they're sharing their story, and they're saying, this person, they brought up someone's name. This person in this state was messing with me in this state. They were in our state. And then I realized that this person they're talking about, I was friends with on Instagram before, because there used to be all these communities on there of like Q community or awakening or whatever. And I met this friend through that, because it was all like, when you get invited in this group, it's like everyone share each other's contact, like immediately follow each other. Well, this person is an admin in one state, messing with people in another state. And then there was a third connection I recently realized. And I'm like, this is so weird. It's almost like you see the web of people, and it's not as many as you would think. It's almost like it seems to me like a close-knit group that are all communing with each other across states. And once you start to see that, that's the thing you have to come against. And that's why I became so vocal, because I was like, wait a second, these people are orchestrating division, halting work, and all of that. So sorry about going off on that tangent, but it's just, I want people to understand that until you become in the back channels, you don't fully grasp the gravity. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Well, I don't hate Tor. It's like I'm not here to try to sway people from her or to put her down in any way or anything.
Yeah, I was speaking for myself, just so everyone knows. And I don't hate her either.
Yeah, no, I know. But the whole point is this is just my experience and something that did disappoint me, and that kind of goes along with that there's things orchestrated, right? That's what kind of put the feather in the cap for me as far as leaving the community. As Wonderland anyway, I still look, I keep an eye, has anything changed yet? Has it got any better? But it just seems to still be the same circle jerk, the same information, just rotating over and over as the people rotate. I find that it's like anyone telling truth finds out truth about things or speaks about it, most especially, either get removed or leave on their own because they get ostracized anyway, or they get called an op or I mean, being called an infiltrator or being called an op is like the biggest thing. It's like, oh no, if you go against this narrative, you're an op, it's like, oh, holy shit, whatever. It's like, but what did it for me was when that whole Judas stuff happened, right? And those who understand what that is and who that is. But
I'll just say, when there was a major shift in the structure from above, I forget how many months, about 6 months or so ago, you'd say?
Probably about maybe 8 months ago. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. People
between 6
know.
and 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in one of those actually a room was legit created so that I could talk with Tor, and ask questions because I didn't believe because, this person was my friend, and that person will always be my friend. And I don't care what people think or say or believe, whatever. It's like, I still believe who people are at their core. And that will not change for me. And so I wasn't buying into some things because I had heard both sides of this story. right? But from Tor, I wanted some answers. Like she kept saying, well, she was betrayed. It's like, well, how were you betrayed? Because I had already heard the other side. It's like, well, how were you? And I had found that I got like 4 different answers, and they came from different areas. Like you heard one of them where she just touched on part of it, but she never really wants to go into it at all. Like when she did the Cali call back in May, right?
Yeah, I
And
think
then
it
when
was
she had said,
that one was simply like something weird happened. That was the explanation, essentially.
yeah, and then there was another one where, oh well, it was because Jax deleted. Oh, sorry, it
You
was
can
because
say,
shit.
but these are online personas
It
that are
was
public. It's okay.
Yeah, it was because this other admin had deleted their DMs with her while they're talking. That was another story. Then it was because supposedly the fake Judas had like touched her computer at some point or whatever. But what people don't know is like she had permission to do that. Everything was like nobody got the full story from Tor. So that room was created. I don't know why they wanted to convince me so bad. I really don't. I mean, I'm a nobody. I am a nobody. I'm not important. I'm not anybody important on TG or anything like that. I may have been loud at times and got into it with people or whatever, but I'm not like I'm just a regular person like everybody else. I'm in equal ground with everybody else as far as in my mind, So I don't understand why they wanted to convince me so bad that this person was a Judas. But what did it for me was when I firsthand experienced in this room that was created for me to be able to get some answers from Tor or talk to her. I was asked to set that Judas up. Now, in my mind, I was actually asked to try to get her to accept like $1,000, and that this one person, by the way, that works with Tor, the one that has access to these different systems, computer systems or programs or whatever, which I believe she does actually work with 3-letter, but not here, in a different country from what I understand, but still, regardless. Anyway, that person was like going to send me the $1,000 in order to get me to have that admin accept it, because they knew that we were still talking, right?
Did they express intent for this?
No, it was. I knew it was to just try to get her to accept it. Now look, you got to understand, she had already been labeled a Judas. That she had already done something wrong. Now, if you have something on somebody that they've already betrayed you or whatever, then why do you need to set somebody up?
Yeah.
Why do you need to set them up in order to trap them in some kind of way, in order to have something? And even then, why would you have people that could talk about that, like me? Like why would you be so stupid? To me, those people are fucking stupid. Sorry, It's like, it really, so, I mean, at the time I was hurt. I was back and forth. Like, I mean, is this real? What's true? What's not? I had to go through and look within on a lot of things, on what I felt was really true at its core. Right. And as I kept seeing these discrepancies with Tor herself and with the people that were within that group, and you guys all know who they are.
Yeah.
It made things abundantly clear for me. Now, I may have gone along because I was asked, hey, if you do see, because this person is my friend, it's like, if you see anybody trying to come at me or hurt me or whatever, will you let me know? It's like, absolutely, of course,
Yeah.
Just for a simple fact of like, I care about this person. I'm like, I don't want to see them get hurt or get set up either way. So I would say maybe I went along. I said I would go along with whatever they were trying to get me to do to this person in order to be able to stay within that group and be able to know whether they're going to be trying to hurt her or not,
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
why some people will come back. That's why some people, which you guys all know too, will come back at me. And I think it's gone back and forth even in Gen Pop already. So it's like, oh, well, I have screenshots of you saying this and saying, yeah, I know. I've got them too. Then there's a reason. But I didn't do it, did I? No, I didn't take any action and didn't have any intent of taking any action to try to set somebody up. See, the whole thing is that's where it goes back to everything that I did. I thought that, like, from rules and rooms to believing everything I'm told, just not questioning, and just even things that I did see red flags on. It's like I would bypass because I trusted Tor so well, that it's like there's no way this would be this. And I think that's where I find a lot. I mean, even people I've gone back and forth in Gen Pop on, it's like I felt kind of bad. It's like, well, why, so what if they question? Let them question. We need the questions. Let people figure shit out. It's like, but I tried to do everything that I felt was true, and that was that was still with integrity, right? And once I found that some things were indeed truly not with integrity, that they were being manipulated for a fact. And for me, it's a fact because I experienced it firsthand. So to me, it is fact. To everybody else listening, it's going to be hearsay. And you can fight and argue and call me whatever. I really don't care. This is a fact for me.
Yeah.
That things are being manipulated. It was it for me. And I had to, at that point, step back, like really step back. And I started unraveling, as you call it, that ball of yarn backwards. I started going backwards as far as looking at everything, going backwards. What about this now? What about that now? This makes more sense when you add in that this entire thing that we love so well, that we were pulled in by, whether it was the voice that attracted you, whether it's actually the information, whether it's the camaraderie, or whatever it was for each individual that drew them to this place. And you find out something so disappointing, for sure, for yourself. It makes you have to look at things a lot differently. At least it did for me. And once it almost, it killed me inside, and at that point, like, you hear all these people talk about cults, and you hear all these people talk about, I've never been part of one before or anything, so I wouldn't know if I was, I guess. But what I did experience, like when you step back, like anybody and I would challenge anyone that has been following, I guess, any kind of podcaster or influencer, right?
Yeah.
For any amount of time where they spend many hours and many, I spent every available moment I had either trying to manage the room, or dealing with these back channels, or researching this, or trying to find that group, or who's in the, all this stuff. It's your life at that point, other than what you're doing in your life, like going to work, eating, the regular shit during the day. But every other minute was spent with this. I would challenge anyone that spent any amount of time that is their life at this point, or they find themselves every day having to check it, to step back, even for 30 days. Can you go 30 days without that platform or that person or that podcaster? And then when you do, it's like, do you feel any withdrawals? Does your body feel different? Do you know who you are still? If you can't answer these things when you do, then I would call it a cult. I would call it some kind of addiction, or at the very least unhealthy. And
Absolutely.
and mentally, that, of course, that's not good. And spiritually, it's not good. One thing I did take from this is spirituality, stronger spirituality. I always had spirituality, but it brought me closer. It made me have to go within even more so and rely on that more so than what I'm being shown and told, if that makes any sense. You have to look at yourself and go within, and determine what's real and what's not, because I can guarantee that a lot of the stuff that people are hearing, seeing, feeling they're just not true. It's just not true. Things are, so much is being done in the background of, and as far as different states and stuff like you were talking about earlier, there absolutely is a web there. There's some people, I mean, I found out through different, and like I said, this is all, it comes back to hearsay, right? Do you believe a person or do you not? The certain people, they would say, "Oh, don't talk to that person." Certain people are kept intentionally separate from each other so that they don't talk. Because if people start comparing stories, like you were talking about earlier, like once you started talking to people from different states and stuff, then and dots start to get connected, and then the big eye-opening happens, and you can't have that when you have a huge platform and a bunch of followers too, and that's your income, and you can't lose that, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that kind of psyop continues, I guess, is a way I could put it.
Oh, absolutely. When I look at it, it reminds me of a pyramid type situation structure, but also like spread out over the nation in this web. So I always see like a very intricate web where you have your main hubs, like the quantum episode where you realize there's like, you know what I mean? Certain people at the top, and then they have their little connection circle, and then they have theirs. And it's like, once you see the key players or the usual suspects or whatever, it's like, oh, that's why you're everywhere. I would notice that someone would be everywhere at the right moment when they needed to mitigate or do damage control or spread a narrative or something. And it's just kind of like, then you start, I'm like, wait, what state are you in? Wait, you're in that state, in this state. It's kind of funny. Yesterday, or I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, one of the main admins was like telling someone that they were booted because it was suspect that this person was in 2 staterooms. And they were like, I just thought it was weird or whatever. Well, then 5 minutes later, as we're having this conversation, this person reveals that she herself, as main admin, is in 3 staterooms, and she's justifying it with no explanation given. And I was like, rules for thee, not for me. Interesting. But you do start to see they're in multiple spaces for a reason, because
hypocrisy at its finest, let me tell you.
Absolutely. So there's so many things you brought up that I want to go into. I want to first bring it back to a couple details that I think the listeners, specifically in California, might want to hear. But before that, I had a question. When you were kind of being put in that situation to set up somebody or to get them money or whatever, was Tori in that room when that conversation was being had?
Was she on at the time? I don't know. I don't remember she was on at the time. It wasn't Tor that said it. It was told. It was put in writing though in there that it came. It was put through her to ask me to do.
So it was put in writing in a space that she could see it.
Right, because it was just her, me, and three or four other people. That room was created for specifically to be able to ask her questions regarding this subject. And it was put to me that it was being requested by her.
Okay. Another question I have is, in California, there's a public perception that you were involved in stealing our data. So we have this library space and then it went missing after you were gone. I would like for you to share the truth on that and correct the narrative.
So when I left, I stepped down, right? I wanted everything out of my name. I didn't want any part of any of the rooms. I didn't want them. I wanted to give them to Tor at the time. Tor would refuse them. I sent them, I tried DM, I tried asking her, I tried putting it in every place I could. Like, I want to give them to Tor. Tor would refuse the room.
And we're then, talking later specifically about the room with all the data, right?
Any Cali room that was in my name, anything that had me as owner when it came to Cali, all of it. So hopefully that covers, anything that was in my name, I was trying to get out of my name and put in and transferred to her. it was being refused. Now, just for, what I did find out later is that you can only have so many rooms, and I think Telegram has a limit where you can't add any more. So if she was taking over all the states at the time, then I can understand why she wouldn't want all the side rooms that each state created. So that made sense to me, and like, okay, fine, no problem. Her right hand at the time, you got Dolphy, you got Marilyn, you got different people that were helping or working with, right? It's like tight knit. And so my only other option was for Dolphy, right? Then, so it's like, okay. And it was discussed. It's like, look, I'm going to transfer it then to the person that's going to give it to Tor, or be able to, it was like, okay, well, let us at least, it's like, we don't want the data lost. We don't want to lose anything for the state. So that was the purpose of putting them in there, was to be able to supposedly save the information so nothing got lost, and it was supposed to be Kelly's. So that was thing. So everything was transferred at that point, and then I was done.
That makes sense, because, and I'm sorry that perception has been out there, because it sucks when something that's not true is believed. And I was one of the people that was told specifically by one of those two people you just mentioned that you were the one that had the ownership. So I apologize for that. And I want everyone to know that that's not true. Also, it's not surprising, because Dolphy, the persona Dolphy or whatever, did admit in California that they were there to collect and protect data. And now I understand it better. At the time I didn't. So the interesting thing about that's really heartbreaking is that was a collection of documents and data and websites and resources that we collected for many months, and it was never released back to California.
For years.
Well, and it was never given back.
Worth of shit.
Exactly. It was never given back to the room. So all the people in the room collected and gathered that data and things they were working on, and it was never given back. And I even told Tor, I reached out to her at one point and said, because I started a new room like that, and I reached out and I said, the last room, our data was stolen. I thought it was by you. I don't know if I said your name or not. But I was like, so please take ownership over this room. And she did immediately. She's never spoken to me, but she took ownership. But it's interesting that I was letting her know that a false narrative was out there, and it's frustrating to me that she let that be real. And knowing that Dolphy was charged with that task, under Tor's watch, she chose not to give us our data back. That's something for me I didn't know
that.
That's very I
didn't know it wasn't given back to Kelly.
No, they wouldn't give it back. We thought it was you. That's why I texted you. So we'll just, for the room, at the time I thought you took it. So I texted you something about stealing our data. You and I had a little moment of being frustrated with each other. We blocked each other's numbers and haven't talked since.
Yes,
up until about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I forget when I reached out to you, but I had this moment where I was because as you say, going back in time, it's all the things that I thought I knew about certain people, even the quote Judas or whatever, I question anything I was ever told. And now I try to think of these people in the best light as possible, hoping that they're okay, because I feel that sometimes there's a lot of scapegoats and people who get demonized and all this. So as I'm going back and realizing this, you came to mind, and I'm like, what really happened there? Because I don't know if I believe anything that happened. And when I called you and you and I were on the phone, it was everything you said made so much sense. It was filling in so many blanks for me. And I just think that people need to know that public perception is not always reality, especially in this community. I told someone today in this room where people are struggling because people are coming out and telling the truth. And then some people are covering their ears, running out of the room. I can't know any of this information. This is just drama. And that's what they do. They create these dynamics where they demonize someone, and then they steer public perception so that people don't listen, like you said earlier, to the person who's talking. So it's really important, I think, for the listeners to understand, if you hear something about someone, a usual suspect or whatever, to really not jump to conclusions, because I would start asking deeper questions of why is this person a target? Because like you said earlier, the people who tell the truth the most are usually the ones that get the target on their back.
Yeah, and you know what the most unfortunate part of it all, for me anyway, is that there are thousands of people, and that's just in these state groups, right? That's just the state groups, or even just Gen Pop, right? People new come in, they don't know. I mean, they were like us, they just come in right away. They like what they're hearing. They think something's going to be done. Now, for me personally, I haven't seen anything actually. I've seen Tor be able to um, move forward and grow and be successful and stuff, but I haven't really seen for the people, like I see the same regurgitated information go, like the same. I won't believe, I couldn't believe it, because when I did pop back into TG, it was like the same CTA was put out at that time that we had done almost 2 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
why are we doing the same thing 2 years later? And why do people need to waste time and be distracted on researching the same information we should already have from 2 years ago, that we already did, tried, true, and exhausted by thousands of people? Why are we doing this again?
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? Like, it was disheartening, and it just reminded me of this concept, like shark teeth, right? Like, when one falls out, there's one right behind it to replace it, and it just keeps rotating. I guess with every rotation of new people, then I guess you're able to rotate the information and just do the same thing. My question is, was this always the plan? Was it something? I mean, there's always ops within ops within ops within ops, as we're told, air quoting here, right? Is that what it was? Or was it after money started rolling in? Now, Tor doesn't ask for money, but in a way, there's also plausible deniability that happens on left and right. It's like, if she doesn't correct something, then she allows people to just think what they want to think and assume what they want to assume. People turn into guard dogs, or they go the opposite direction. But it ends up still being people's perception. It's not really truth. It's just perception. Whatever it is she puts out, it's going to be your perception, because nothing's going to be factual, nothing's going to be actual, nothing's going to end up coming from it, from what I've seen, right? And what's disheartening is that once you're there long enough, and as people start to see, it's like, where did they go then? It's like, it breaks people's hearts. Some people lose hope, which is what the most disheartening part is for me, is they lose hope. And that's the last thing we need. So this op, is it really helping bring people together? Is it really giving good information and doing anything good for our country? I love her information, but at the same time, nothing really gets done with it. People lose hope when they find out the bullshit that's involved with this,
Yeah.
And then what happens is you end up losing people instead of empowering them. Yeah, you empower them to start thinking for themselves, and you empower them to work together and get together within their communities, which in my personal opinion is the only way you're going to be able to do shit anyway, is in real life, not on a platform. That may be good to, like, say, hey, reach out to people that are on one side of the state versus the other side of the state, but hey, just call each other instead. You don't even need that platform anyway with that too. So either way, you don't need that. What's going to make any difference, in my opinion, is actually getting your feet out there with the people on the ground and doing the shit, actually doing the shit, not talking about it, not arguing about it, not setting up a back room for this and setting up a room for that, and arguing whether this is true or that. I mean, you're spending hours upon how many thousands of hours on this damn platform, just boosting her income and her podcasts and everything else. And I'm grateful to her. I'm grateful to her for what I've learned. I'm grateful for her for where it's led me personally. I still love her, and I don't think she's an angel from God anymore. In fact, I think I've called her the opposite, and I'm sorry, but it's happened. I'll admit my shit, but I still feel bad for the people, and the people need to just know to really truly, when they say don't be a sheep, it goes so deep, because even with this, that you think you're doing the right, you think you're doing what is true, and you think that that this is accurate with all your heart, right? And you're full force, full on, you're protective of it. You want to protect it, and you want to move forward, and then you find out that perhaps not everything is true. It's like, I just hope that these people don't continue to lose hope and don't think that there's nowhere to be or nothing that can
Yes.
be done still, because there's everything to be done still,
I love
and
that.
and
Yep.
and people can. It's just that's what's disheartening,
Yeah.
is I've seen
No, it
so many
is.
people be like, screw this. And then they end up going to people who truly are doing the same thing then, because people seem to think that they need these podcasters and these influencers in order to give them information, in order to lead them in a direction.
Yeah.
And honestly, they don't. You really
Right.
don't. You just need to have your own desire of change within you, and spread it around you where you are, and you will go somewhere with it. If you can, you just got to talk to people on your own. You don't need these influencers,
Exactly.
and
Well,
people seem to feel lost.
we don't need influencers, but the thing that made Tori special was this community that she created, because or that we created, whatever. The point is, grassroots situation did happen. It's no longer grassroots. I believe it's completely controlled at this point. It has been for a while, but you can't deny the reality of the fact that it created a beautiful opportunity to get to know one another and for a community to happen in spite of all of this shit coming down from the top, from her admins, whatever. And it's like, I think that the sad thing, like you were speaking to, and one thing I've heard in the stories I'm being told recently, is a lot of people think they're the only one on the outside. And they don't have the community anymore, or they have to go in secretively, because if their name is even brought up, it's just going to be met with this bullshit. And it's this form of, like, I've seen a little form of PTSD from this psychological, mental abuse, whether planned or not. And that's the hard part for me, is the casualties that we've experienced. We're not just talking about accounts. We're like dehumanizing people in our mind when we look through this app. We have to remember, yeah, there's infiltrators or whatever, but these are real people behind these accounts. Every person has a story, a life, a family, has most likely been vocal in their community, in their family and friend group, and been ostracized already after 2020. And then on top of it, they find a place where they feel that they have like-minded. And then if they're too free thinking and they ask too many questions, then they're put back on the outside. Some of us, many of us, have overcome that and found a way to keep our community going, but it took courage, because we had to somewhat separate from the group dynamic and create our own space. But not everybody has that. There's people who are completely alone now, who in the last 2 years, this was all they had as far as a connected patriot community of love. And it's just, you're right. It's very heartbreaking. Another thing I was thinking when you were talking is, you're talking about where people should feel empowered. And that's a message we hear all the time, is trust yourself, trust your gut. How are you the underdog? It's such a beautiful message, but it's not really in action within this dynamic. And talking about empowering, someone shared a clip with me recently. I don't listen to her shows anymore, but I'll listen to clips, and I heard her literally say yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, as all these people are starting to speak up about self-governance, and as her admins are starting to stop that from happening, she literally said, oh, you all want to self-govern, but you can't send a letter. And I felt like she was mocking people for believing that they could genuinely be free, and saying, but you can't send a letter. What does that mean? Does it mean that until you do what I say you're going to do, you don't get to self-govern? Or how do you know who's sending letters and doing what? And why does that have anything to do with this freedom that we should be able to exercise and experience here? Because when she came into Cali, she said, you're a mini republic. You have no leadership. The admins are there to do the will of the people. And then we turn into this situation where she's mocking us for believing that we have the power to self-govern. And I'm like, how have we come so full circle from the Tori I first came to know and love?
There's many contradictions. Yeah, I heard that too, and it was like it did kind of sound like that. Unfortunately, I picked up on the same thing you did, and it was like, well, you guys say you want to self-govern, but yet what do you guys do? What do you guys do to be able to do that? As if we're not listening to her suggestions,
and we
that
haven't
we
been
don't do
working
anything.
well, and also that we haven't. And that's the thing, that I'm not saying this for fact, but in my experience and being in cults, there is a trend of tearing people down constantly. Like, you're not good enough. What were you doing? You were doing nothing. You were picking out backsplash. You were doing this, but then it's like, but you're amazing and you're the best people ever. And then all of a sudden you're not doing enough. And if there's a flaw in the structure of the system, it's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. And it's like, I think that what happens over time, and this is my psychological brain, I should have gone into this field. I'm always like wondering about human behavior, but like I noticed that when you're beat down and then built up and beat down and built up, and it's all connected to this one source, this one individual, any person in any kind of dynamic like this, you become so dependent on that person. It's almost like you get to the point where you're waiting for them to tell you who you are and what's okay and what your next step is. And like, I feel that I've seen a decline in people. I know in myself, there was decline. In some ways I was growing spiritually in incredible ways, but in other ways, as far as my fear, questioning myself, I guess, is the biggest one. I started to question myself more than I have in my life in 15 years, and didn't trust myself as much, because when I saw conflicts happening, I would blame me instead of the dynamic I was in. So anyway, that was a long rant, but it's hard.
No, it's accurate.
Yeah, it's hard. So when did you stepped away around 6 months? I'm trying to think if I have any other questions pertaining to that time. One thing I wanted you to share is when people thought that you were removed from being main admin, and that's not accurate, correct?
No, well, first of all, I didn't even know I was admin for like a week or so. And then, one of her admins that was removed that same day had DM'd me saying, "Congratulations, you made admin." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't want to be admin. I'm not admin." And I think that person kind of looked at me like, "Oh, I get removed and you get put in." Oh, so started thinking some shit about me that I didn't even know, wasn't asked. I had said over and over I didn't want to be an admin, because personally I wanted the freedom in Gen Pop, excuse me, to say and do what I wanted to do. I didn't want any restrictions. So I never wanted to be an admin in Gen Pop, but I was just automatically made an admin, and I didn't know it. I even DM'd Tor and say, "Hey, after I went and looked, then after I got that DM, found out that I was an admin, I was a little confused. So I DM'd Tor. I'm like, "Hey, was this a mistake? What's up?" She didn't really respond, but kind of like an LOL. That was kind of it. I'm like, "Oh shit, okay." But what people don't understand is that, yeah, she made me an admin. But at the same time, I had no admin privileges. Like, I wasn't able to delete spam. I wasn't able to ban people or remove people, or I wasn't able to do a single thing other than it was just a title. And I had asked her to remove me as admin, that I'm not into just titles. I don't care about the title. I don't want just a title. I had been I was also talking to people that were close to her to kind of help me get this through, like, because I didn't want to have to at that time leave Gen Pop in order to remove my own title, which in the end is what I ended up having to do. I had to leave Gen Pop to remove my own title, but because they refused to, and in fact, I was warned not to do that, because I had told them, "Look, I'll just leave Gen Pop and remove it myself if you won't remove it." I was told not to do that, that Tor had a reason for doing that with me, that it was somehow to protect me or something, or which I found to be total bullshit. And I don't like the games. I was never into the games. Like, I'm not into these psyops or games or whatever. And especially if you're going to be messing with my mind, it's like, this is not cool, because people are looking at me like that. Yeah, they were blaming me for banning people and stuff like that, but at the same time, I had no ability to do so. And supposedly this was supposed to protect me somehow. It's like, whatever, so yeah, I left Gen Pop in order. I had to remove my own title by removing myself from Gen Pop.
So,
and I didn't take kindly to the threat. I don't take kindly to threats. I have grown spiritually to where I would prefer to have peace. I would prefer to bring unity to people than division in any way. Even with my enemies, I will send love to them. People that wish hate upon me or bad things upon me, I just send it back with love. You know, it's like, but at the same time, I'm not going to just be a doormat or anything either. I still have the fuck around and find out at my core, you know.
Yeah.
I will love you, but I'm not going to let you screw me, you know. And that's what it felt like. So that's why I had to remove it myself, because it was a refusal. I don't know
Yeah.
what the game plan was with that, but you know, don't threaten me. Don't threaten me and expect me to just say, "Oh, okay." Not gonna happen. Sorry. Love you though.
No, exactly. And I would, you, as much as you're comfortable sharing, but before we get to the aftermath and the positivity and everything beautiful that's come since then, which is how I do want to end. Are you comfortable with talking about any of the threats and or intimidation or things that affected your real
Oh,
life?
so I
Because I
got
think it's
doxxed.
good.
So if you leave, apparently, if you're in that inner circle at all, and you happen to, you know, step back from TG at all, even though you tell me I'm stepping back from TG, whatever, then you don't respond, you don't jump, you don't agree, whatever. Like I said, there are certain people that have access. If they get your IP, which they do and will, they'll also get your phone numbers. I mean, the person that doxed me, you know, and sent somebody to my house, leaving notes on my door, talking to my neighbors. A little while after that, I had, you know, texting to my family members, and I had one of my vehicles uh, destroyed, pretty much. I mean, well, not destroyed. I mean, I get it fixed, but messed with. Followed different things. Like I mean, that stuff does happen. Now, how do you prove it? I mean, I can prove part of it. I can prove part of it because of where it came from, and I still have the handwritten notes and stuff on that, on certain stuff, because all my, you know, my address, my phone number, my name, everything was doxed for a fact, and I know who did it, and then I got a reason of why, you know, it was just concern, things are subtle, things are done subtly, and will be called something else. Either way, you're being doxed and you're going to get fucked with.
Yeah.
In any, I lost my train of thought. These people, I had said, well, I'm just going to change my phone number. My family's going to change their phone number too. I was literally, I mean, I got laughed at, like, go ahead. And it was a laugh, like, go ahead, we'll just get it again. Because that's
Wow.
exactly what
And
they
this is
do.
by a
I
right-hand
mean,
person to Tor.
yeah, in fact, they were an admin just recently, up until just recently too. So it's like, I was like, okay, so I might well not worry about changing my number. I did change my phone. I mean, I had to. And the whole reason I had stepped back from TG at that time anyways, because I had ran over my phone at work. So I had to get a different phone anyhow. And I tried to explain this to them. But things happen for a reason, I guess. It's like that happened to show me, like, yeah, I thought it sucks. I had to get a new phone. But at that time, it allowed me to see what they're capable of,
Yeah.
right? Something that would not have happened had that not happened. So I think everything happens for a reason. And that just gave me a little more enlightenment. And then I started digging on that kind of subject, like what's up with this? And I started to find out that I know that person that doxed me too was in a way sort of, well, had said, okay, remember, hearsay again, but regardless, it was told to me. But they were being trained by this other person that works supposedly with these three letters, that gets Tor information, that gets these other people the information, that has access to these high level systems and whatnot to be able to get this information. And I was like, wow, you know, and that person was like, yeah, but I don't do the dark stuff like the other one,
Like
the
kids
one
and
we've
stuff.
mentioned earlier. Like, yeah, like stuff. She's like, I just can't do that. I'm like, oh, well, I don't blame you, but it made me kind of step back too and realize what the hell is going on. Like, people are being almost indoctrinated or like brought in on other levels that that I got enlightened to then too, like to just see how far, how deep shit kind of goes. Tora is not lying when she says that your groups are infiltrated. She's not lying when she says that her admins even are, or that these people are some kind of agency. They are. They absolutely are. And but the thing is, she works with them. She knows, she gets her information from them. So of course she knows. It's like, at least from what I understand. So,
I don't know if you heard recently, there was a little bit of a shift in narrative where she brought up a handful of times in the last few months how, oh, not all feds are bad, feds are good. And I'm like, what is this about? And I'm not saying that's not true. Obviously, there's good people in every position, but I'm just kind of like, there's a lot of narratives about the feds are good and they're helpful and all of this. And I'm just like, that's weird. And then, oh, by the way, your feds as admins. Like, one thing I've noticed personally through this whole experience is, as I realize all these things that I believe about her now in hindsight, I think back and I remember she told us all everything that I feel now, she has 100% admitted to. And for some reason, I did something in my mind where I spun it into something else instead of just like Occam's razor, and looked at the elephant that was right in front of my face, like the elephant in the room. And now it's like that moment I had after leaving, similar to your moment where it started to change. It was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh, you've been asking every question except for the one. And then I saw it so obviously. So I don't know. I feel like I have given consent to this entire experience every step of the way, because I've been told every bit of it straight from her. And I'm like, wow, so you literally walked right into that one. And anyway, it's interesting. It is my personal conclusion. Some people have very different theories, and I used to tell myself these fantastical theories, and I'm not knocking anyone, but a couple of them is, one in particular is when you go through a bunch of bullshit in this community and you have situations like what you've experienced or what other people have shared with me that has come to their home, into their life in dangerous or intimidating ways. A lot of us have considered ourselves blessed to have been deemed worthy to go through such struggles. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I'm not trying to like shit on anyone's interpretation of what's happening, but I in hindsight, I'm looking back and I remember telling a friend a couple months ago, oh, Tori is like, she deems me worthy to go through so much shit in her community and to never help or to never stop it. And now when I think back on that, I'm like really sad that I was subjecting myself to it and justifying it.
The thing is, we all make the choice to stay or go. Yeah. We all make the choice to accept what's said or not, or believe what's said or not, or to do. It's our free will in any participatory way when it comes to this whole experience. So you can't really throw it on her. I mean, she's doing her thing. It's up to each individual whether they discern or they don't, or what they get from it, or they don't, or whatever their experience or their journey is going to be with it. Because we all may have similar ones, we'll have different ones. We'll have people that are completely opposite. I mean, but the thing is, it was our own choice. So we did it to ourselves, essentially. And I agree with that. As far as like the credit thing too, it's like she doesn't, I mean, things are pretty blatant if you put her in the mix of an op regarding this whole experience, things do make more sense and the dots then connect. But you can't do that unless you can see these other things first, unfortunately, for a lot of people. But they'll get there, I have hope. But and that's okay, because it still helps people in a way, right? So, but it comes down to that thing where, she says she doesn't want to take credits to people, but yet at the same time, if somebody calls her a name, it's like, hey, everybody jump over here. Go protect me over there. It's like people just can't seem to see these things as they're happening, because you get so far into it that you ignore red flags. You ignore the things being shown to you directly in front of your face. And in a way, it's like a mental psyop. it's crazy. It's just a crazy experience. And for me, it's like I couldn't really see it until I left it.
Yeah.
And then going back, it's like, yeah, you still go back because it is a form of PTSD to an extent. If you put any sort of amount of your life into it, you're going to, once you walk away, it's like, well, has anything changed? Are things better? Are they? So you look and it's like, wow, it's like, do I come out there as Wonderland? You know, it's like everybody's going to automatically assume I'm going to like rip their head off or some shit because of what has been known.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, wow, that's not who I am. I mean, it can be. I mean, I guess if you get pushed to a certain point, anybody can be, but,
Yeah.
so that doesn't mean that's not in me, but that's not what I want with people, you know.
And I know that I can even speak to that from when we first became friends back when I first met you, and we would talk on the phone for hours and I saw everything beautiful about you. And I've even told people since, like, she's such an incredible, beautiful person. And like, there was times I was struggling with things when you were like such a mama bear type for me, just kind of like so encouraging and holding my hand through it while I was crying or freaking out. And like I just want everyone to know that side as well. And I think a lot of people do. It's just, I think that it just makes more sense now, understanding kind of everything that you were brought into and where you're coming from. And back to the whole thing about, it's on us. I do agree, free will and all of that, but I do think it's important for me personally, just to speak that there is an element of being manipulated, whether it's in a relationship with someone or a group or whatever. If that element's there and there's something about it that is worth staying for, whether it just be the incredible knowledge or nothing to do with, like Tori, let's say the community, because at some point the free will to stay is because you care about these people and you care about the cause, and it's totally separate from her. I care about my country. I care about California. So if there is an element in there that is manipulative and kind of taking advantage of your desire for hard work and to connect people and let them be free and to speak for that, then I think it's okay for some people to acknowledge that that's wrong. Even though you agree to it, it's still wrong. It's like we're in this fight for freedom regardless, and we're going to get attacked from all sides, not even just on Telegram, in life. And it doesn't make it hurt less. It doesn't make it okay, but we still move forward because at the end of the day, that's what we do, right? Like, just keep going. But
Absolutely.
there's two things. It is on us, but it's almost like telling a victim, like, it's your fault. I think there's a level where we can say, and also you fucked up and you shouldn't have done that shit to me, you know?
Yeah, no, I don't mean it that
No,
way.
I
I just mean that we gravitate towards this because we're looking. I really do believe that most people want what is good and want what is right.
Yeah.
And so they seek it out. And when you can find people to gather with, like-minded, that are on the same path or have at least the same goal, whether we agree with each other necessarily or not, but we have the same ultimate goal, which is our country, you know, the security of our families going forward and our kids going forward, and something for them to look forward to, and whatever your reason for wanting it for, you know, it's the same for all of us, but different reasons. I mean, but the goal itself. So you gravitate towards that. And what's screwed up is that you just don't want it to be a psyop that breaks you down, which it does after a while, indeed break you down then to where you're dependent upon. It's like you're codependent. And that's not what we're teaching, supposedly, is we want free will, free thinking, independent, but yet collaborative, you know, but by choice, not because you feel codependent upon and don't know what to do or who you are or anything else without it, you know? And that's what seems to be in a lot of cases from people that I've spoke to anyway. It's like they end up with that same feeling, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it's not it is our free will getting into it, but the psyop is definitely not our fault, because most people in general, like I was telling somebody else not too long ago, it's like I didn't keep up with like what psyops are or experienced psyops like that, or I didn't know, I'm a regular person like anybody else. Like, what the hell is that? It's like, oh, okay, so you get thrown in the fire and you learn by fire, I guess, you know, and it's like, holy shit, that's what that was? Okay, now I know. right? Not that I should want to know or even be, to be honest, I could have done without knowing it because I don't see my life going forward being involved with that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, I still am going to be a regular person that just wants what's best and want my country back and want its freedom back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what the hell do I need to learn PSYOPs for? Shit. I mean,
that's the thing. Someone told me yesterday, they were like, and this person's amazing, I love her, but someone was like, well, we needed to learn who all these people are. I'm like, I didn't need to learn who these shitty admins are. I knew they were shitty immediately when they were being shitty to people, and I don't need to spend 6 months of their admin term to learn who they are and wait for their pants to be pulled down. Like, it's obvious to everyone. My question, and I wouldn't have known them had they never been in our life or imposed on us. So it's like, this is kind of a useless lesson. This doesn't help me in real life. I guess it does in a way for those who are running for office. They are going to have to deal with this type of like bullshit, because I guarantee this is a great training ground for that moment. But I always say, there's a cost benefit ratio, and I believe that the cost and the loss is so far greater than these lessons for these specific individuals who are going to actually use this PSYOP training in the future. It's a little too much for me. I'm like, this whole place is a PSYOP training for PSYOPs and PSYOPs on ops. And I'm like, I feel like it's a place where flies get stuck in a web, and some flies are just trying to tear through their part of the web to grab their neighbor's hand and say, let's keep moving forward. And some flies are hanging there for all to see. And it's just like, can we just fix our country? Can we just say?
And even then, we're not even getting the truth even on that level.
Yeah.
I mean, on some level we are, but it's like, holy crap, anybody that had any sort of, different opinion rather than what was being put out as the collective narrative, right? It's like, you're an op. You're an infiltrator. You're like, and what it does is it breaks down, instead of unity, it breaks down trust between everybody. Yep. Like, even unless you have a tight-knit friend group, and even then you're like, wait a minute, who are you talking to over there? I don't know if I trust you now. It's stupid shit like that would go on and on and on. Like, even the people you really love and care about, like, if they go off and talk with somebody else, then, it's like, oh, well, why are you talking to them? It's like, does that mean you're part of that group now? Can I trust you? I mean, 100%. This is what that environment does. And it's like, that does not bring unity, even with your enemies. This country has how many people in it? They're not going to be in our tight-knit little friend group that we can fully trust 100% or agree with, even on any level at some point. It's like 100%. We need everybody.
Dude, the amount of people.
Everybody, whether we agree or not, whether you like them or not. Who gives a shit if you like the person, where they come from, what background they have, who they fuck, who they eat with, it doesn't matter. As long as we get shit done, then it doesn't matter who you are. And I can dislike you again once we get the job done, but let's go,
100%. And even quote bad people put out good work. I've seen like people that I don't like in the past, and they're like, you're kind of getting them to work more because, there becomes a competitive element. And I was like, if my quote enemy or some dude or chick I don't like puts out more work to look better than me, then more work got done. I don't give a shit.
Exactly. Then more work got done. Yeah. Let the competition do what they're going to do, because they want to compete to be better. Who cares?
So raise the bar, and then they'll raise the bar. Yeah. Absolutely. In the marketplace of ideas, the best ones stand out and shine through. And that's the thing, is this paranoid you're talking to is so real. And then I've recently, because I'm telling you, coming out of the woodwork, I'm learning things about other states. And one person, their stateroom made me even wonder if it was worse than ours, and ours is pretty bad. They are now, the county, if you don't relinquish your county groups that are started by people who just live in that county, they want them to relinquish it to the state admins. Otherwise, those people are getting banned. I don't know, but I was like, why
would the county? That makes no sense. Why would the county groups have anything to do with Gen Pop? That makes absolutely no sense.
Not even Gen Pop. Because the county, that's like the state. admins over, like, let's say, I don't know the state, but let's say the main admins in that state are saying that we need to have ownership of all your private county groups. Otherwise, you get removed from the whole state.
This already happened before. This is a repeat. So
Really?
This is fair warning coming up then. This has already happened. And what will follow, okay, is if they're asking for, this is my opinion, but I've already seen this, been there, done that. Exactly what you're saying, because it's already happened. Maybe it'll be a different outcome. I don't know, but I like it. Anyway, so what'll happen is they want the admins that they have control over to have control over anything that you guys have control over, so that whatever they want to do with it gets done. And what that took place prior to all these changes being made, it's like, look, transfer everything over to so-and-so's name. This certain admin will be one that they know that they can manipulate, control, influence, whatever you want to label it as, or listen to, whatever. So it's like a chain.
Well, that's exactly
what happened before.
But that's what Ghost and Callie wanted to do.
So expect some changes, and if people do that, then you can expect the changes will happen anyway. If that's the plan, if there's going to be some changes coming up, and they need that controlling factor, they're trying not to lose that data.
Yeah. Well, there's a control.
They will be willing to lose the data of those who don't comply, though. Just so it's going to happen anyway. Just FYI, whatever, if that is what it is, it's going to happen anyway. Just like what happened with Callie, it's like, oh no, I don't want this. You hold on to it. And sometimes I kept feeling like they wanted me to keep a hold of shit because they wanted me to stay in there. Just like
or
when
to
they were
blame
saying,
you for some shit, like when you're holding
revote
on,
me in and shit like that. It's like, no, I don't want to be Cali admin. I don't want to be Gen Pop. I don't want to be fucking admin. No.
Well, there's a liability thing too. They like to kind of hold, once they have control over you and they have stuff they claim they can use against you, or they've put you in a position where you've done things. It's like almost like a blackmail type thing. It's easier. So they want to keep these things in the hands of certain people. That's what Ghost Show was trying to do. Ghost Show in California. Oh yeah, he was trying to hold the staterooms under his watchful eye, and it's interesting that you say that that's happened before and that it's coming around again. I think that's helpful for the listeners to understand that this is an actual thing. And the blackmail you were going to speak to.
I think that does. I think that does happen. In a way, I kind of think that's. I mean, this is just opinion, but I almost feel like that's kind of what happened with Judas. Like, I think there's certain people will use other people. They'll use them emotionally. They'll use them mentally. It's like you psychologically mess with somebody. It's like you either have them doing things not knowingly, or even if they know they're doing it because they feel like they're doing what's supposed to be right, or convinced something's supposed to be right. I think that gets used a lot. Also, if you agree, even like, for example, like what was perfect example on a smaller scale, right? Like what I was talking about being used in Gen Pop when I was going back and forth with a certain individual about, oh, well, I heard you say this, that you were going to go along with it. Yeah, you heard me say that, but did I do it? But it would be used against me because, there's screenshots of me saying X, Y, and Z. But do you know the story behind it? No, people would not know the story behind it. They would just see that screenshot. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to voice recordings and screenshots, I watched it happen in real time. People will take screenshots of conversations or things happen, and you can take those conversations and you can populate a different, you can create a room, whatever, to populate these conversations. And you can put these paragraphs or these statements and stuff in a certain order, which will completely change the dynamic of that conversation and what was intended in the message. I watched somebody, one of her admins, up until recently, I watched one of them do it in real time. And so I didn't realize that, but I was learning, right? It's like, oh, that's how that's done. It's like So you just take somebody's conversation. You got to be careful what you say. Even if you are careful with what you say and you are clear and concise with what you're saying, it can and will be twisted around to fit a narrative that they need at that time to make you look a certain way. It is done absolutely 100%. I saw it done in real time with my own eyes, and they're telling me about it on the phone as they're doing it and having me watch how it's done. It's like, your statements will be completely misconstrued. Your comments, what the conversation actually was. You can take multiple conversations you had in writing, and combine or put it into a different. They can manipulate it to where.
Yeah, so it looks like it's out of context.
It reads differently.
Yes,
exactly, and I know it's done with voice recordings as well. If you're a good editor, you have no problem with that as well. So even on a voice, I mean, this Zoom can totally be crunched up into certain pieces to make it sound like something completely different than was actually said had a person not heard the thing in its entirety.
That's blackmail.
Just so people know, don't believe everything you hear. Yeah, or see. And if somebody say, well, I got screenshots of this, yeah, okay, and so what? I know what you did with it, so it really doesn't mean shit as far as I'm concerned, because I already know what they've done to it,
Oh, and they tried to do that with me, and I think that's part of the reason when they bring you in. So the other day, Sai was talking about how, well, this new thing for banning everyone didn't really come from Tori, but she said it probably should happen. And I can't enforce it because the state groups are free. So I essentially told them they would look bad if they didn't do it. So he's revealing, one, this manipulation tactic, and you're seeing that there's no chain of command. This never had to happen, but the way that it's formed, it goes from her to him to some admin room, then it gets to, the one who's at the center of all the bullshit in California and tries to keep his hands clean, and then she reposts him. So it's this full circle of this game of telephone, and by the time it gets to the people, it looks like it came from her. And when you dig and find the answers to these questions, you realize that no one's to blame. But basically at the heart of it is we essentially pressured them to do this thing to hundreds and hundreds of people, remove them from their own communities in their own states, because we told the admins, essentially, you'll look bad if you don't do it. And I'm like, it's all manipulation. And all these people are like, well, it probably came from her, so I'm going to do it. So you find out, that's why I always call it I'm just doing my job crew.
People assume that this shit comes from her, though, too. So you got to step back on that a little bit as well. So there's that plausible deniability as well. You got to understand that she is not the only one who posts on her Red Phone account.
Yeah, I know everybody is too,
and I know she had publicly said nobody posts on her, but it's like I have the DMs. It's like she told me she has people that post for her on her Red Phone. So that's how I found out. So it's like what you see posted on Red Phone doesn't necessarily mean that that's her posting it anyway.
Right.
It could be any one of her admin. And if she's saying that her admin are feds or infiltrated and stuff like that, then you're going to just jump on whatever's posted on Red Phone because you assume it was her posting? I mean,
whose orders are you following? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is the key words right there. Whose orders are you following? Now, just sit back and think about that for a minute. Just that statement. Whose orders are you following?
Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing. And that's why and then we would have these discussions about, well, did it come from her? Did it not? She's not clearing it up. Regardless of who posted it, she's aware of the fact that it's going to affect hundreds of people. That post specifically, it had over 300 comments, and about 200 of them were people saying, hey, why would you force us to come into this shitty chat if we want to remain in our staterooms? Why are you going to remove us from our local communities if you do this? And I was in there. A lot of people were asking honest questions. And I went back to find that recently because I wanted to see my comments, and they had removed 200 of the comments from that post. So the only comments that were left were people that were like, okay, we'll do, sounds good. And so it looks like a compliant thing. And I was like, wow, that's really dark that they're going and rewriting history and erasing transactions where people do speak up because they want to give, well, this is my assumption, they want to give the impression that those who speak up are just, annoying little dissenters that everyone should ignore, when really they're silencing the voice of many.
Well, see, that's the thing too. Like, I wasn't a dissenter. I wasn't kicked out of TG. In fact, I was asked to stay. I was told to stay. I was, like, I wasn't labeled this or that or anything. I left on my own. But yeah, you still get the same rap if you leave on your own.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The thing is that people just need to, people need to do whatever they feel they need to do. It's everybody has their journey.
Yeah.
People will go whichever route they feel is right for them and what they feel is just for them. And I don't want, I like I said in the beginning, it's like, I'm not here to sway anybody or try to convince anybody of anything. I'm simply sharing my experience and what happened throughout the years, to me, through me, with me, in my journey through that, and I think it's really sad that certain people get put on certain raps, because of whatever they want to call dissension, I mean, there's people I know that were really good, really, really, really loving, good people, that completely have had the rug pulled out from under them. And it's sad because it devastated them, and so like, like we talked about before, with some people, it was their life to help people and make a difference. And whatever, everybody has something they do, whether they're disabled or they're able to, run a marathon. It doesn't matter. There's every walk of life that absolutely makes a difference in this. And everybody has something to be able to do in this that makes a difference and takes the entire collective. Just the frequencies alone of everybody having a positive mindset in something is going to change the world, and when you dishearten people or you mess with their hope, then that frequency goes down and nothing gets done, really. It lowers the levels, and it's just sad to see.
It's very sad to see it, and we feel it, it's like you feel that lowering, but I have to bring it to a positive, and then I want to ask you about your experience after. But one thing that I've noticed that I can't get this verse out of my head: the light shines in the darkness and the darkness has not overcome it. And it's been my beacon every single day, that no matter what, everything shitty is turned into something beautiful for those who are here for life, who embrace it and who keep walking forward, regardless of how lost we may get or find ourselves along the way. God uses everything for good. And one thing I've noticed is, because of all these challenges, it's like we see a web, right? This organized web, however it's organized, whoever's doing it isn't important. We see it, and it's affecting all of our lives on negative ways. It's stopping us from free flow communication, relationship, work getting done, all that. But underneath, this thing started appearing in the last few months where there was this other web showing up, and I see it like little bright diamonds all over the country. And I've seen it this way since 2020, when I woke up, almost like all over the world, like a different kind of web of light, because so many of us are spread out and we feel like we're the only one in our community or in our family or friend group. And like, I've always seen it like little lights, little diamonds that are connected in a quantum way or some kind of a deeper way, where recently those connections have been being made. And it's like, I can't explain it any other way than God orchestrating this and starting to put people together. And it's been the most life-giving experience to see that I could have never found my way to all these people that I cannot imagine not having in my life at this point in time. They feel like my family. And I've seen how he's done that in the midst of all of this. So I just want to focus on that's something that I think is really beautiful. I have more people are like, oh, you're just talking shit about Tori. No, I have more hope than I've ever had. And so many of the lessons she taught me still ring true and are still seen in my life. I don't see the substance of those lessons in that space or necessarily with her, but I see it in the people she's speaking to. I see it in myself, and that's what gives me an incredible amount of hope. So I would love for you to share, like, since you left 6 months ago, what it's been like after Tori or, the involvement that you were in before.
Well, so I bring up like challenging people to step back and see how they feel from it, right? Because like I said before, it's like even on my lunch breaks, my regular breaks at work, it's like I would be in there making sure or doing whatever I'm supposed to do, right? It was a way of life. When I left, it was like, okay, so there's this time to fill, what am I going to do with that time? Your automatic instinct is to go there. And for me, I had to like just fight that urge, that conditioned response to automatically do this or do that, be here, be there. And it took a lot. It was depressing for a while. It was like, okay, like, what do I do with this? So for me, I started, I just kind of started going within. Like I said before, it's like I've always had, my spirituality, but it was heightened. It was grown. There was somebody, so I found things within my time to do, found things for me to do. Other than still talking with people, like, oh my God, I don't know how many people I actually was able to wake up at work itself. Every day there's a new conversation after I left with somebody about the things that we do, what we can do, what's going on with the country, things like that. So I still continued that, and made a lot of new friends because I had the time to. And I went within as well, and it was crazy because it was actually Judas that had told me one time, like, well, you mentioned shadow work on something. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I started looking into that because I hadn't really like researched stuff before. And once I did, I realized these are things I had been doing all my life, just didn't know there were names to it or titles to it or what it was. I'm being able to learn why you react certain ways or why you, deal with certain things certain ways. Or, I mean, you just work on yourself, on who you are as a person, right? And why things affect you or why you allow things to affect you and where it comes from and all these different things. So my spirituality grew afterwards, and I ended up getting involved in that a lot more as well. So what happened is I ended up being able to combine spirituality with my fight for the country. Only I'm able to fight for my country, dealing with it with people on the ground that I meet locally that are within these spiritual communities now, where I feel even more in tune and aligned with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's been something that I thank Tor for. I thank her because had I never found her to begin with, had I never been listening to these red stringers, right, and heard her interview and went through this entire journey called Telegram and Tor Says, I wouldn't be who I am now or where I am now as far as the progress I've made personally for my journey and what I'm doing in life, right?
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for everything that's happened and transpired, even the shitty things that went on, the things that hurt me, the things that broke my heart, the things that, the good times, the bad times, the ugly times, all the different things. It's like I'm still very grateful for everything. And I really do believe that everything happens for a reason. Now, whether, Tora means this stuff to happen because she has a habit of that, like saying, oh, yeah, I knew that, or yeah, that was intended, or this, who knows, right? Either way, whether it's BS or not, and I don't care. I'm still grateful regardless for what's transpired. And as much as I don't wish it on anybody, as far as, the bad things or the hurtful things, I do wish for everybody to be able to enjoy their journey, regardless of what it is, because everything is temporary that you go through. And there's always going to be guidance there if you can open your heart and your mind to see it. And you'll be okay no matter what. We all are going to be okay regardless. I know God guides it. I know that Spirit guides it. So I'm with you on that one. But that's what's been for me. It took me through some pretty dark places. Like, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I didn't know, am I going to come out of this? Like, my family was like, what's going on? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? It's like, oh, nothing. And I did it. I went through it alone in that sense. Like I nobody knows. I mean, this is the first time I'm actually even really telling anybody about it. As far as that, as far as who I met and stuff like, but that's I talk to people about. But what I went through personally, as far as with the disappointment and the losses and the sadness that came with certain enlightenments regarding that whole experience, it was tough, and it was very sad. But I'm grateful for it because I'm a hell of a lot stronger now than I ever was, and I'm thankful. So.
No, I love that. Yeah, that's what I was so excited to talk to you, because it's like when you're removed from it, for some of us at least, especially though I think part of it is you and I were there more than the average person. To be fair, most people don't invest the amount of time in it as we did. And I think it's just like having the admin position, reading everything, like when you remove yourself from it, like you said, it is a kind of a shock moment. You start to feel like, what do I do now with my hands? What do I do with my time? Like all of a sudden, but for me, it's like, one thing I noticed is like, I felt a weird clarity show up pretty instantaneously. It was like, I would say, I went through a day of darkness that I shared on this, like that was really low. And then all of a sudden I started to get this excitement and hope for like the unknown, almost like I'm on my own now again. I mean, I have people I still love, but I was kind of like, I'm free to do whatever, say whatever, be whatever. Oh my God, I can trust myself again. I don't have to run everything through. What would Tori say? It's like, I can kind of like think for myself. And then I noticed right after that, I started watching, I watched all kinds of things, and I always have. I've never been one that subscribes to the idea of turn them all off, because I think we should use discernment and we should trust ourselves and watch whatever the hell you want. Watch the patterns and all of that shit. So I'm watching people and I'm noticing that I had this instinct that I had to like filter out, that was like, I need to go, I would think something and then I'd be like, I wonder what Tori says about the situation. It's like, I almost was like, felt this feeling of like reserve judgment until you find out what Tori thinks. And I didn't know that was really there until I stepped away from her. And it was little things like that I started to notice that were kind of lingering, that I had somehow put in between myself and trusting myself, and also things I placed her in between me and God in a lot of ways, almost like, and that's just my personal experience. So as those things started to weed out, I started to realize I can actually think for myself fully. And I always could have, but I gave it up. And so now I'm watching things and I'm just discerning for myself and coming to my own conclusions, and I'm freely sharing them and talking about them. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's fine. I don't need someone to tell me, how did you not know that? Or you should have known, or I said that before. Like it was so freeing, I guess. So Yeah, I
That
think
was
that,
part of it. I think that's always a part of it too. And I can agree with that. It's like you go back to, well, when you leave and you think about all that stuff, like, yeah, it's depressing at this part, but then you pull yourself out looking like, well, who were you before you even started that journey on TG? Like what led you to that? Like you go back to your roots, right? On
yes.
who you are, what your determination was, and yeah, if you just take those lessons, good, bad, or indifferent, and you take them with you, it makes you stronger, and you just go forward with those, and you're even more effective and powerful going forward because you do realize who you are, and you know your work, you know what you're capable of now, and you've just got more tools in your tool belt to be able to utilize going forward and being more effective. It's an amazing thing. That's why I'm grateful for it all, regardless of what part of it. It's still an amazing journey, and I don't hold like I wouldn't hold anything negative. I feel sadness for some people when I hear that they lose hope, and you hope that you're able to maybe bring that back for them or help them somehow. But at the same time, I'm hopeful for everybody's journey along
Yeah.
throughout that process. I think either way, it's all guided, so it will one way or another eventually. I think no matter who it is, even
I
the ones
fully
that
agree.
we call evil or whatever, it's like I still think that there is a core of good in everybody. Um, some it's just a little deeper than others.
Oh, and you can look at
Personally,
people
I think.
who oh, absolutely. You can look at people as you've seen only cause chaos, but I personally can look back on my experience with them and see how God used it to help me overcome so many things in my own life. And that person, I've thanked God for these people. Because sometimes you ask God, like, help me with this thing. Like maybe, for example, help me quit drinking. What I notice is God's going to let you make a fool of yourself drunk. He's not going to just take away the desire to drink, and then you're going to learn. And I think that when you ask God for humility or for strength or courage, he might give you some obstacles and say, all right, climb this, and so how can we not be grateful for any of it? It's like, we're still alive, we're still breathing. It's a crazy story to tell. Whatever position you're in this story, it's like, I'm right there with you. I'm thankful for all of them. And I try not to reserve hate in my heart towards anyone, because one, it makes me sick. It's not good for me. I can have righteous anger, and trust me, I have a holy fire burning in me. But I also, but I also know that holding on to anger is not good. So I think that it's really
No,
beautiful
it'll
that you're
affect your
expressing
body.
that. It will, and it'll affect others around you. And it's like, it's finding that balance, like you said, between love and light, and fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I mean, you can still be. I mean, even God has some swords up there with him. It's like there's angels with swords all over. You just don't, because you don't see them. Doesn't mean they don't exist. But
Exactly. Well, okay. So this, honestly, I adore you. I love you so much. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you telling your story. And my final question, I suppose, is, looking back, whatever comes to your mind, what is the biggest thing you've taken from this whole experience over the last couple of years, like personally?
compassion. I think it's been the differences between people, learning that just because people don't maybe work with you or don't agree or don't. I mean, I had that before, but not as deeply. And the tools, I guess, per se, to be able to say, okay, this is how to go about working with somebody that maybe thinks of me as an enemy, right? Um, I had to learn to work with people that would consider me an enemy, and I would have compassion for them because they don't, compassion for everybody because people are on different journeys. And sometimes you don't think about that. You don't realize that when you're in the trenches on things and you're trying to do what you think is right, and you get so engulfed in what you're doing, and you're immediately surrounded by it, and you lose the sight of everything surrounding that that you're focused on, right? Because you have this whole world around you that's going on still too. And I think that's one of the things that I took. And learning to continue to trust myself, because the things that I did see going, that I ignored, right?
Yeah.
The things that my gut was telling me originally, that I allowed myself to just override and go with, because I thought I was doing something right. I should have listened to what I felt rather than what I was thinking. Kind of like, there's head over heart and there's heart over head, right? Like decisions you make, and I should have went with heart instead of head on some things, but you learn that, and then you find that balance to be able to do what you really do feel is right. And I think if you can find that balance and move forward with using both in balance, that the decisions and things that you make are going to be more effective and more true to who you are and what you feel good about doing for yourself going forward.
Yeah, I love that so much. I appreciate you for coming on. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Sorry for being so scattered all over the place. I've never done an interview before, so yeah.
I think this is like one of my favorite interviews, Paul. You're actually amazing at doing this. So no, you were
I don't know
perfect.
about that. I'm still a little embarrassed, but hey, whatever. I don't care.
Well, I think
Hopefully
it's beautiful.
if people that maybe feel a little bit of the same on some of the stuff, if it helps even one person, then I'm happy.
Yep. And that's where I know your heart is, and I love it. And I've seen the growth in you. I've seen the growth in me. I think we're all, and that's all I care about is like, we're moving on and we're moving forward. And yeah, well, I appreciate you for coming on. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode, and we'll have another one coming shortly. I'm just kind of trusting God in this process and going where the Spirit leads. And the next thing always just reveals itself in its own time. So thank you all for tuning into this. Thank you, Wonder, for coming on.
No worries.
All right.
You got my number.
I got you. All right. Bye, everybody.